at what moment did you know you were called to ministry?
I think there's no particular moment. It's a series of things that happen in your life. People who influence you, I think. People who set an example, and you think, I would like to be like them. I think theologically we'd probably say, maybe you're seeing Jesus in somebody else and you want to emulate that, which is what our faith is all about. But I can remember moments when somebody was not Catholic, went to his funeral, and they told about how he gave oil to people in the wintertime that didn't have enough oil for them, and people at the funeral were like, I didn't know he did that, I didn't know, And so he was a servant, and I think, that was the inspiration, or one of the inspirations for me, is to be a servant to other people, to help other people, If I couldn't give them oil, maybe I could, pray for them or give them something different, that kind of thing. So, anyway, it's not one moment, I think it's a series of things.
What steps do you have to take in the process of becoming a deacon?
In our diocese, the first requirement is 2 years of lay ministry, okay, and that's once a month for the 2-year period. And then you would apply to the diaconate, and if you're accepted, you go through a psychological exam, so on and so forth. And if you're accepted into the program, you go into aspirancy, which is a period of 9 months to a year, to determine if this is really your calling or not. So the different spiritual exercises that you go through, and it's basically, is this what I'm really called to? Am I, do I know what I'm doing here? So you do that, and then if you complete that, then you're kind of looked at by the people who are running the program and say, okay, we invite you to come into the program. So after that, it's 4 years of every other weekend. We go to the Charlotte Conference Center in Hickory, the Catholic Conference Center there. So yeah, that's it. And then your wife has to attend. If you're married, your wife has to attend also. Yeah, because she has to support you in your ministry.
Yeah.
There are many times when your wife has to say to you, look, you remember me? Because you get all wrapped up in church. Oh, I got to help this person, I got to help that person. And she said, but you have to remember you're married. You have responsibilities. You have a family. So she's there to be a counterbalance to this great desire to serve everybody. So yeah. So they go and they learn. At least they're exposed to what you're exposed to. So
describe what you remember about your ordination.
The person who announced my name didn't know how to say it.
Really?
Really.
How did they say it?
I don't even remember. I mean, I remember he got up there and it was like he was tongue-tied. It was like, Walter, and then finally something came out. I don't know. What you say is you're present, you're here. But anyway, the other part of it was so much fun was getting my picture taken with the bishop, and my mother-in-law was there. All my family was there, and that was a great time. So I still have lots of good pictures and memories of that.
When was your first Mass as a deacon?
Probably June. Well, it was June the 10th. We were ordained, so whatever the date was right after that would be that was in 2006. Yeah, so June something, 2006.
What other ways have you ministered in the past or
before becoming a deacon? I think I just get involved in church activities, like I sang in the choir. I continued to sing in the choir while I was a deacon, but then we got too busy. So anyway, but I worked on the faith formation committee. I worked in the welcome committee. Got involved in putting events together that welcome new people into the parish. And one time we had a square dancing thing. This was in the old church, and we would get into the gym and we would help out. We would do the reception for RCIA, the Easter Vigil, and so my wife and I would decorate the old gym. If you remember how what a cavernous place that was, but we would decorate it and make it look a little warmer and more presentable, and we had a great deal of time, do a great deal of fun doing that. And my wife came into the church she was a convert to Catholicism. And on the Saturday that we were setting up to do the reception for that evening, she was there doing flowers and stuff. And Father Joe came in and said, "What are you doing here? You're supposed to be praying." So she said, "Well, I have to do this because I'm the only one that can do it." So anyway, so that was kind of funny. But yeah, that was a great moment when she came into the church. We had come to church together. She had, growing up, she had known people who were Catholic. She had gone to church with them. But still, she wasn't, quote, officially a Catholic. And I think part of her becoming Catholic was what influenced me again to learn more about my faith. And to learn more about my faith, I had to do these things which are, lay ministry and so on and so forth. So anyway, yeah.
In what ways are you involved at IHM outside of Mass?
Outside of Mass, well, of course, I'm head of religious education, which involves youth ministry and faith formation and adult education, baptismal prep. I mean, anything that's involved with faith formation, But the thing I should emphasize to you is that the deacon is a servant. Okay? When you're on the altar, you're not really a servant, although you're exercising when you get the opportunity, your ability to preach, which is a great opportunity. It's a gift that the church gives you. But outside of church is really where your ministry calls for you. It calls you to serve the community. And if you find people in the community who are in need, you should bring those needs back to the pastor of the church and say, here's somebody who lost their home, or here's somebody who needs help, they don't have enough to eat. Those are extreme examples, but there are always people who the pastor can't know about everything. Yeah. So if I'm out in the community and I know people who need help, they don't have to be Catholic, they just have to be people, human beings who need help. And so you bring those needs back to the church. Hospital ministry is another way. You sit with people who are suffering in some way. Not everybody in the hospital, and this is kind of funny because very rarely do you visit somebody who just had a baby. We're talking about Natalie and the royal baby coming, but it's so beautiful when somebody has a baby rather than somebody who's suffering from pneumonia or some kind of possibly life-threatening illness. And I remember the first time I did that when I was a deacon. I went to the hospital and this lady had a baby and she gave me the baby. I was so surprised, but she wanted me to hold the baby because she thought there was something special about me as a religious person that I could apparently give the baby some kind of blessing or something. I don't know, but anyway, I was flattered and honored that she just let me hold her baby, But anyway, it's a wonderful thing that way. And I also work at hospice, or volunteer at hospice as an auxiliary chaplain, and so I visit people there who are at the, I guess you could call it transitioning to the end of life, and it's difficult, but it's also very rewarding to be able to be present to people during that difficult time.
So, what are the responsibilities of a deacon during Mass?
During Mass?
During Mass.
I guess make sure the altar servers are not falling asleep. Now, I think during the Mass, obviously you read the Gospel. Once a month here at IHM, we get to preach. I also get to preach in Spanish once a month, so that's another blessing, if you call it that. During the Mass, we just make sure that things are moving the way they should. We receive the gifts with the priest and pour the wine and so on and so forth, and we're either a minister of the cup or a minister of the bread when that time comes for communion. So other than that, we're participating just as everybody in the church is participating. Hopefully singing and saying the prayers and kind of being that bridge between the congregation and the priest.
How do you prepare to give homily?
Well, it's many steps, but the first step is to read the Gospel and read the readings for that week. And usually I read that on the Monday before. And then I start to obviously think about it, and I have a yellow pad that I write ideas down. And it's funny, when I was preparing for become a deacon, Father Tom was at our house one day for dinner. And my father was alive at the time, and my father said something funny, because he was hard of hearing and he would misinterpret what people said, so sometimes it was something really funny. And so Father Tom, he said, you know, Wally is going to become a deacon, so everything you say is homily material. So, and it was pretty true, because you go around looking for ideas, stories, events that happen in life, in the news or whatever. I mean, even Father Joe would look at comic strips once in a while and see something funny, that he'll bring that into his homily, you know. But then also from a scriptural point of view, it's not a Bible lesson. It's supposed to be a lesson that you take something home with you. You know, you hear something, a reflection that means something to you. Now, it's not going to mean everything to everybody. I mean, you may be sitting there and 1 week you get something, and then for 3 weeks you don't get anything that helps you in your spiritual life. Because you can't preach to everybody. Because we have kids from what age? You know, 5 or 6 years old to adults who are 90 years old. So you can't possibly preach to everybody. So you just try to pick a middle road. And, you know, and I read commentaries, what other people may have said about the different scriptures, but it's not a Bible lesson. It's about how we live our lives. You know, do we believe what Jesus said, and do we follow that? You know, it's not how we pray. It's not how many times we go to church. It's how do we relate to other people? How do we love? And that's the most important thing, is how do we love? You know? And that starts right in our own family. You know? And so I think that's the important lesson. We try to bring that across in the homily. You know? And again, that idea of helping people. You know, something's going well, like this past weekend. They had the tornado. You know, so we announced we're going to try to help Greensboro in some way. You know, well, there may be something else that you want to bring to people's attention. You know, that we need to help in some way, whether collecting more food for people who don't have enough to eat, or the kids who don't have food on the weekend, and that kind of thing. So those things are all material for if you can work it into the homily. That's all good stuff to bring to people's attention.
What's the most challenging part of being a deacon?
Well, I think the most challenging part is that you're not a priest and you're not a layperson.
Yeah.
You're an ordained minister, but you are you don't really have any authority to do anything. You know, I mean, the priests have authority to say mass and so on and so forth. I have authority to preach, but I don't preach unless they give me permission.
Yeah.
So that's very, you know, that's very hard. So, you know, I guess you have to have a certain attitude, a certain disposition. I always feel like Rodney Dangerfield when he used to say, "I get no respect." You know, we get respect for what we do, but you know, we're kind of a hybrid, because most of us are married, and priests are not married, and so, but it gives us an advantage in one sense, because we can talk about marriage. You can bring up marriage in a homily. A priest doesn't know what that's about, although he's probably talked to lots of married people and knows something, but it's the day-to-day living, you know, that is important for a married person. So if you can bring that into your ministry, that's good, you know. But I think the challenging thing is, not that you're looking for recognition, but it's this idea you don't have any kind of authority, you know, so.
Okay. What did you see in Frank's career? Because I know you knew him before he decided to become a deacon, and I've heard you had a conversation with him or advised him to become a deacon. So what did you see in him that kind of motivated you to advise him to become a deacon?
Well, in Frank, I didn't really know him that well, but I observed what he was doing with the Knights of Columbus and different things with youth ministry and things. Anyway, and so, Alex, it's very hard for me to recall exactly, except that I said to myself, that man would be a good deacon, because he has a servant heart. He wants to help others, he wants to serve others. And he seemed to be a very humble person, not somebody who was say, hey, look at me, you know, not that kind of thing. So it was kind of funny, and I think Frank would give you his take on it. But one day he was coming out of Mass, and I just saw him, and I said, did you ever think about becoming a deacon? And he said, yeah, as a matter of fact, I have. And that was like, really? You know, really? So, because I expected him to say, no, I'm too busy, or, you know, how people, you know. But anyway, I thought it was really odd. And I don't know, I don't, honestly, to this day, don't know what prompted me to ask him, other than I saw him. And as I said, his response bowled me over. But I was so glad, and it reminded me that somebody asked me too. Because I think some of us are saying, well, I'm not good enough to do that, you know. But if somebody asks you, it must mean something, that you're a little better than you think you are, you know. So I think that that's important for any kind of volunteer activity. If somebody does ask you, you know, would you like to help on this, or would you consider doing this, you know? Because otherwise we just shrink within ourselves and we say, I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing, you know. Just, you know, live in my own little quiet world here, you know. So because it involves stepping out from where your comfort zone is, you know. And I think it's true for a lot of people. Public speaking is not natural. You have to practice it. But I'll tell you this, I've been doing it for 12 years, right?
Yeah.
And various formats, preaching at church, I'm still nervous. And you'd say, well, you know, but maybe being nervous is good, I don't know. But it's like, okay, I hope this goes over, you know, and you get up there and you go, how this is gonna come out, you know. But you kind of, maybe it keeps you on your toes.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I still get nervous. Yeah. It's not something I get used to. Yeah. Anyway, I don't know if that's an answer to your question.
That's great, yeah. So kind of a follow-up to that, how have you helped him on the business?
I think, you know, when you go through this process, there's a lot of stuff, and I call it stuff, that's like the rules and regulations of formation. And I think, you know, from time to time we would talk about what he was going through and compare it to what I went through, and hopefully that comparison caused him to be more comfortable about what was happening, that he was not being singled out, or that his group of candidates was not being singled out for this treatment, this harsh treatment, or you know, this unfair treatment, you know. So I think that helps you to be more comfortable. And I had somebody I asked too, because I kept saying, why are they telling us this? You know, there's all this negative stuff that they're putting in front of us. And a friend of mine said to me, he says, it's just to keep your head in there, so you don't take anything for granted. You know, it's like if somebody said to you, well, we're not collecting the homework. Well, would you do it or not? You know, say, maybe I'll blow it off. I'm not going to do the homework because she's not going to pick it up, you know. And so I think the same thing as an adult, when you go through this formation process, you have homework, you have preparation to do, you know. And if you weren't if your nose wasn't kept to the grindstone, as that expression goes, you know, maybe you just sort of be lackadaisical about it. Yeah. So yeah, I think you know, just helping say, well, this is the way it is. You know, you just have to go through it. A lot of stuff you may not like, but just grin and bear it. You know, it'll be over in 4 years, and it was, and it is, and so we're so happy for Frank. So, anyway.
What advice do you have for those who are thinking about joining ministry in any form?
Well, I guess advice would be to be prepared to give of yourself. You know, no matter what the ministry is, you have to give of yourself. But you can't be thinking about yourself. You have to be thinking about the other person. If you and I were sitting in a different situation and we were in a hospital or in a hospice or someplace, and your loved one was there in the room, whatever situation was, maybe somebody was dying or whatever, what am I going to say to you or to your family that is going to be helpful? Probably very little, but perhaps somebody from the church being there as a friend would give you comfort. You know? And so what skill does that take? If you're volunteer, you should have a certain amount of skills, but being a good listener is one of them. And it's probably the most important one, especially when you're ministering to people, because they don't want to hear about your problems. They've got their own problems. So what are you going to say to them? Nothing. Just be there, be present for them. So I think that's the most important thing when you're volunteering or you're doing anything. You know, you have to give of yourself, you know, but not talk about yourself. It's good.